Welcome back to another episode of Startups for the Rest of Us. I'm your host, Rob Walling, and in this episode, I welcome Derrick Reimer back for another round of listener questions. We talk about the best AI coding stacks, how to balance shipping fast with UI polish, when and how much to think about security, and more listener questions. Before we dive into those, I want to make a call for speakers for MicroConf US. You can head to microconf.com/pitches if you feel like you have an incredible framework, a unique insight, or something else to share with 275 of your favorite bootstrapped and mostly bootstrapped founder friends. MicroConf US is in Portland, Oregon in mid-April, and we are filling out the speaker docket as we speak. MicroConf is unlike any other event I've ever attended. We don't let people sit and pitch their product. We're looking for great talks from folks who are in the trenches, whether you're a founder or an advisor or a consultant, a freelancer, if you're working in SaaS or on a topic that can really help SaaS founders and you feel like you can deliver it, and you have proven experience on stage that has been recorded at least once, you should head to microconf.com/pitches. And with that, let's dive into listener questions with Derrick. Derrick Reimer, welcome back to Startups for the Rest of Us.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you, man. I believe this is your 22nd appearance, but who's counting? I'm really into numbers. So we are going to answer some listener questions. You're back by popular demand. I mean, honestly, not a month goes by that someone doesn't either comment on an episode you've been on or say, hey, when are you going to have Derrick back on the show? And I'm always like, pretty soon. So you're a fan favorite.
Too kind. I'm honored.
Let's dive into our first question. I have a mix today. There were some questions that have just come into to the main Startups for the Rest of Us line. But then a couple days ago, I posted on X Twitter and said, hey, Derrick's coming on the show. What questions do you have kind of specifically for him? And the first couple will be along those lines. So Brandon Manson on Twitter asked, as a solo founder with a 2-month-old and a 3-year-old and 2+ hours of commuting per day, I found AI coding to be an absolute game changer for me. I use Claude Code plus GitHub Coding Agent to do what is essentially spec-driven development. What tools and or workflows are you using?
2-month-old, 3-year-old, 2+ hours of commuting a day. Oh my gosh. Brutal.
Yeah, let's just have a moment of silence for your productivity right now, and it won't be permanent. But my kids are 4 years apart, but that's a lot. So
yeah.
AI is going to help you,
and it is nice to have AI to help accelerate things, especially when you have those types of constraints. Yeah. So my current tooling, and I feel like this is always needs to be caveated with a timestamp of we're in November of 2025, so this may be completely outdated 3 months from now. But as of right now, I'm still using Windsurf as my main editor, which is sort of an alternative to Cursor. The only reason I'm using Windsurf is because someone convinced me to give that one a try first, and then I've just stuck with it. But I think Cursor is probably a little more popular than Windsurf, and they basically do the same thing. They have a little agent panel built in that communicates with the major models and helps you edit your code with AI. So that's my main editor. And I actually don't use the agent functionality in Windsurf much anymore. I've kind of switched over to Claude Code for that. And you can actually install Claude Code into Windsurf or any VS Code based editor so that it sort of, natively integrates as if you were using the agent in Windsurf or Cursor. And I've done that because Windsurf went through a period of time where OpenAI was flirting with buying them, and then Anthropic cut off their Claude access for the best models. And then Claude Code was coming out around the same time. And it seems like Claude Code gets sort of first party access that others don't because Anthropic is the one that's developing it. So they build the model and the agent. So, they're able to make sure it works really well, and they probably give themselves priority on compute and all that. So I use that, but in Windsurf, they still have tab completion type of functionality. So as I'm bouncing around, if I put my cursor somewhere in the middle of a code file and I'm thinking about modifying that code, about, 60% of the time it's able to guess what I want to do and kind of show the autocomplete style, here's the proposed change, and I can just hit tab and accept the change. And that I, for the longest time, didn't like using that type of thing. Like that was sort of how GitHub Copilot worked, a couple years ago. That was the main way that you would use GitHub Copilot. And for me, it always felt like someone was trying to finish my sentences before I had time to think through what I was going to say. And it kind of interfered with my thought process. But these days, the tab completion stuff is getting really good. And it feels like it's reading my mind half the time. So that's kind of my two main tools while writing code. GitHub Code has their new plan mode thing, so you can ask it to do something and to make a plan first, and that's sort of natively built in to the editor. And so it'll propose a plan, and then you can flip it into kind of auto accept edits mode, and so it'll make changes, run the tests, read the test output, make more changes, and kind of iterate on its own, which is really nice. It used to ask a lot more frequently, like, do you want me to do this? Do you want me to do this? And I think it's getting a little bit more refined in its ability to just sort of like iterate on its own. So that's been cool.
Cool. So it sounds like overlap though with him. Like Claude Code seems to be the leader in this space.
I think so. I mean, I will say that I'm not. I feel like every week I'm hearing about some new thing that people are using, and I'm not one to necessarily jump right on it. I kind of wait to see, okay, does it seem like there's enough critical mass here where like everybody's talking about this thing? Okay, maybe I'll give it a try. But like I can only allocate so much time to like trying out something new and potentially changing my workflow, maybe to my detriment, but like it's just moving so fast,
Here's the thing. So I think of being like an early adopter as either it's a hobby that I'm doing nights and weekends, or I have a day job and I have a bunch of downtime, I used to work at a credit card company. I was a developer and I had, 40, 50 hours a week that I was there. And oftentimes I'd take an hour and just kind of screw around with stuff. If I were running my own company and I was coding on I wouldn't do that, right? It becomes a lost opportunity cost. And so early adopters, it's the same way we used to build our own PCs, right? I'm sure you remember that. And then at a certain point, I'm like, when I became a consultant and I was billing whatever, 100, 150 an hour, I stopped building my own PCs because an hour of downtime because my graphics card went down became catastrophic. And this is what you're in now, where it's like every minute counts and productivity is more important. And so it is that balance of, I don't want to try the new AI model or the new JavaScript library that comes out every week,
Yep. The nice thing about these is like, I found in general, like a lot of these AI tools, they try to make extremely smooth to adopt. Trying out Claude Code, initially it was in the terminal. And then at a certain point, I started seeing I don't even know how I discovered it, but it was like, hey, do you want to install this into VS Code? And I was just like, yes. And then it just did it. It was like very seamless. So that's the nice thing is like a lot of these tools are, it's a land grab right now, and they're all trying to be as easy as possible to adopt. So that has been the nice thing. Like compared to other technologies in the past where it's like, oh boy, okay, I got to roll up my sleeves and read a bunch of docs and learn this thing. Like thankfully, a lot of these things are pretty quick to be able to try out. There's a new one called Tidewave from, I think actually some of the people behind Elixir language are working on this, but they're not just building it for Elixir. They're doing it for Rails and Python and JavaScript and these different ecosystems. And it gives you kind of two things. It gives you an MCP server for your code base. So like I can have Claude Code have some first party tool access to my code base. Like it can ask Tidewave to search all the functions that are defined in a module as opposed to it doing a string search. So it has like just a little bit higher fidelity, and it also knows what packages are installed in my project and can read the docs for those. So it has like a direct line to the docs site. So it just helps it be a little bit better at what it does. So there's that, and then I think they're also adding like a kind of Claude Code-esque editor in the browser. So to like open up your project on the side, have a panel, and then you can ask it to make changes to the page that's currently showing, and it'll like live edit for you.
I saw someone demo this. I was really impressed with this. Yeah, I saw it on a YouTube video. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
That's really cool. If you had told me 10 years ago that Microsoft would have like one of the leading editors with VS Code, I'd have been like, no. There's no way the Rails and the open source and the Elixir developers are ever going to use a Microsoft product. Because you remember, I always loved Visual Studio back in the day when I was a a .NET developer because it was just so good. Everything was strongly typed, and you'd type out your object, hit dot, and then you'd see all your methods and all the stuff. It was just really, really engineered very well. And I know VS Code is not exactly that, but it's when it came out, I was like, yeah, good luck, Microsoft, per usual. And then suddenly it's like it's everywhere. I feel like everyone uses it.
Yeah, I think the fact that it's open source, built on kind of deep open source foundations with Electron, and like I don't know, it's like the fact that it's open source and it's been able to be forked by Cursor and Windsurf and others to then layer on this functionality has just made it even more entrenched, I think. Just kind of cool. There's like interoperability with all the VS Code extensions now also work in Cursor and Windsurf. So it's a smart strategic play. There's a lot of jokes out there about how, there's these multi-billion-dollar companies that are built on top of a fork of VS Code. But hey, I mean, it's a land grab. So
that's open source. Yep. Yeah. So thanks for that question, Brandon. And I really appreciate your insights on that, Derrick. I know if some folks are out there kind of looking for, maybe they haven't figured out their AI coding stack, or maybe they're just dipping in. It's helpful to have just a perspective or two in this case, from the two of you guys, from folks who are doing it day to day. Our next question is from @JGeekSEO on X Twitter. And they ask, how does Derrick balance shipping fast with maintaining design polish in solo projects? That daily trade-off fascinates me. And I typed out a response to this asker and did not send it. And my jokey response was, Derrick does not. He just gives up on the polish. Have you seen how crappy his product is? And then I thought, someone's going to take me serious. It was a very dry, like just a sarcastic, dumb thing to say. But I'm saying it here because, anyways, there we are. That sets you up. How do you maintain this balance? I want exactly how you do it. Don't tell me it depends. If you say it depends, I will cut your mic.
I know. These questions are always so tricky. I wish I had a really good answer because it's not a formula. It's like, I was trying to think of the best way to characterize it, without just sounding like you just have to be awesome at it. Like, but I do think it's a learned
intuition.
Yeah. It's
intuition.
I really like it's a learned skill, and you have to build up your intuition on when to call it on something, when something is good enough. And I think it does depend on your context, like how important is a high degree of polish in this area. I would say like not every part of my products are like polished to the level that I would ideally want them to be, but every time we're building a feature, it's like, okay, we have this drop down, and it would be nice if we had like all the icons for all the things showing in this drop down. Like that would look really cool. Is that really that important right here? Like, no. And that's going to add an extra, couple hours to the task, and we need to move on to other things. Like, nope, let's call it. So I think it's a never ending series of judgment calls. And I think you can kind of refine this over time and build up your skill set around it. I will also say, this is some other practical things as I reflect on like how my process has changed over time and how technology has changed over time. Like these days, UI component libraries have gotten really popular, and I didn't rush to adopt them right away. I was sort of like of the mind that every element in your app needs to match the aesthetic of your kind of internal design system. So like you should just, design all your form inputs and selects and checkboxes and radio buttons, like design all these things from scratch to match your internal design system. And I feel like we've sort of moved in the direction where a lot of these things, we're always just kind of looking for them to look basically native. Like a good sensible default is like, do your form inputs kind of look operating system native? And like there's actually a lot that goes into making a lot of these controls truly accessible, following all of the ARIA accessibility guidelines, and like does you have keyboard navigation in your drop downs and all this stuff that like you ideally want to have, and there's not a lot of value these days in trying to re-implement a lot of that stuff. So, adopting either like a Catalyst from Tailwind or ShadCN or Flux, or there's a bunch of these for all the different kind of flavors of front end that people work with. And I started using this in all of my projects, and like SavvyCal meetings are the older SavvyCal product kind of has some hand-built components, but we're gradually moving over to Catalyst components just because it's like I don't want to be thinking about styling all of these things. I want to lean on things that people have put hundreds of hours into carefully crafting. And so like adopting some primitives that other designers have spent a lot of time on shortcuts the process for sure. And then I think about for like higher level components, it's like having the discipline to say like, all right, I built this, say it's like a filtering UI at the top of a list page. And like I figured out the structure for this thing. And maybe I'll have other pages where I need filters, like having the diligence to extract that into a reusable component. So then the next time I need to go and add filters, I'm not, having to think about, all right, let's duplicate this code over and what's different about it. Like if you do the thinking up front when you first design something, then you've given yourself the gift of having something reusable later on, and you don't have to spend a bunch of time on it. So
yeah, the discipline. I like that word, discipline. And because it's hard to do when it's like, this doesn't buy me any time right now, but my future self will thank me. And then how do you not overdo that? Because you can, I've seen people gold plate their code where everything is super, reusable. And so that's, again, that judgment call of, it's just enough. And I think here's the thing, you have to unlearn. If you've worked at big companies and had, again, infinity hours per week to just kind of ship a thing and worked on a big team where you're working on one piece, you can really gold plate stuff and it's fine. And I know I had to unlearn those habits when I started building my own stuff because I needed to move at 2 to 3 times the speed. And so it's like, what do I cut? What corners do I cut? Because there are corners that you need to cut in order to keep your velocity going. And it sounds to me like, I would say you have a very, very refined kind of design and UX, like UI taste or editorial eye, we could say, right? And if I were to say, all right, Derrick, you're going to design this settings page, design and build and code out the settings page versus, like the main interface to SavvyCal that everyone sees every day, you would want the main interface to be a 9 out of 10 plus, 9 plus out of 10. And the settings page, maybe you could do a 5 out of 10 where it's like, there's some checkboxes still. They're not even sliders. And that part is the judgment call, right? But you have to develop that editorial eye first or that taste, right? Because if you don't know the difference, what if you don't know the difference? There's people who just like will look at a UI and say, I don't know, is this good? Is this great? Is this a 2 out of 10, a 10 out of 10? That you also have to develop that, I think.
It's funny how the things that large, famous software that we all know, the things they can get away with, you go to the Gmail settings sometime and just take a look at that.
Catastrophic.
It's like,
I was in them the other day.
It's like, it's
so bad.
Yeah. I mean, stuff is really tightly packed in there. There's the save button that's tiny way down at the bottom, super easy to miss. Just like so many things, quote unquote, wrong with that. I will say, like, if you're a newer entrant to the market, like making sure you have a reputation of like a certain level of quality is often important. Like Gmail can get away with that because it's Gmail, but like your new app that's trying to be viewed as credible, like, okay, you can't get away with that level of sloppiness. But just to say that, like, yeah, there's especially certain parts of your interface, like a settings panel, where like, I think we tend to, like perfectionists like me, tend to want to obsess too much over that. And it's like, just keeping that in check. Like, all right, you can always come back and refine that later. Like, keep that in your mind. Maybe there will come a time where you have some downtime and it's like, you know what, I'm going to take a couple hours and make that page much prettier. But is that really the most important use of your time, or should you go build another high value feature?
That's a good thing to point out. There might be two extremes there where big company interfaces, you say, well, Salesforce and Gmail and whatever, these other big apps, even HubSpot or whoever we could think of, they have really bad interfaces and especially parts of them are clunky. And so I can build a really bad interface too. And it's like, probably not, but let's flip to the other side. Well, I was in Basecamp version 3 and everything's polished, just gold plated everywhere. So that's how I have to be. And it's like, Basecamp has infinity time to ship whatever they want. And that's an amazing luxury that they earned by building Basecamp. And they executed well. They got a little lucky. We know they're doing we think they're doing 9 figures of revenue, tens of millions of net profit. They can do whatever they want. You can't do either of those extremes. If you're going to model yourself, also don't model yourself after Apple because they also have infinity resources to do things. Model after people who are constrained and who have like a Derrick Reimer, any tiny C company, maybe some of the indie hackers that have taste. I don't know. We could point to some people, but I don't like it when people use Steve Jobs as an example of anything usually, because like you're not Steve Jobs. You don't have his resources or his ability, and I don't tend to like it when people use Basecamp as an example, because it's like, you're not Basecamp, guys. And if you are, great, go do that. But like, try to be a little more moderated, or like, I guess, measured in your opinions, and look at other folks who are succeeding as you are, as maybe a single founder or a small bootstrap team.
Yeah, because that's inherent. That's basically the skill, the intuition you're developing is like resource allocation. That's what it comes down to. You think about the fact that nothing you do is free, because there's an opportunity cost of what you could have spent that time on. And the more you get that ingrained into the way you think about things, the more like you're able to be at peace with something that's like not perfect, but you're like, no, but I feel deeply at peace with this, because I know that if I spend time on this thing, I'm robbing that time from something else. And we can't afford to, spend all that time on stuff that's low value.
So appreciate the question, Jules. I hope our thoughts were helpful for you. Are you a non-technical founder with solid revenue and real traction, but your technology is holding you back? You should check out today's sponsor, Designli. They specialize in helping founders like you who are stuck with messy code, unclear roadmaps, or a dev team that just doesn't get it. And for listeners of the pod, Designli is offering their Impact Week completely free. That's a 1-week, no-obligation audit where their team dives into your code, your design system, and your product roadmap to show you exactly what's working, what's broken, and what needs to happen next. If it's a fit, you can move on to SolutionLab, a 3-week sprint where Designli takes over your codebase and architects a real roadmap for growth, led by a full-time, cross-functional team. This isn't just another dev shop cranking out features. Every sprint is tied to measurable business outcomes, so you can scale with confidence and enjoy the process. If your tech is the bottleneck to your next stage of growth, check them out at designli.co/fortherestofus. That's DESIGNLI.co/fortherestofus. Moving on to our next question. It's from Pablo Fernandez on Twitter. And Pablo asks, I have a question for both of you. Do you think with AI, we are seeing a shift from market risk to feasibility risk? When looking at startup ideas, I used to think, would anyone want this? Where today I find myself thinking, can AI do this yet? And what I mean is, most idea validation in the startup world, especially bootstrapping, has been about quashing market risk. Now I see a lot of bootstrappers that also need to quash feasibility risk. And I'm not sure I agree with the terms. Because feasibility implies to me, like, is this feasible to build at all? But I think what he's saying is almost, there's like a weird platform risk that we all are having, that AI could just subsume your business. Market risk, if folks aren't familiar with that, it's like, is there a market for this idea that I have? Derrick and I, you and I could come up with a software that helps people lay out books for printing in paperback and whatever. And it's like, well, I don't know, does that exist already? Is there really a need for this? Is the book industry dying? Like, customer development, like, we'd have conversations, right? Should we build this rather than just going off? Because that'd be kind of fun to build. Hey, let's do it. But we would want to question, does anyone want this? And in what volume, and can we reach them? But what he's asking is interesting, because there are some tools that AI just kind of has wiped off the face of the earth a little bit, or at least is chomping at their margins. And I think that these days is only getting better. How are you thinking about this?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I was trying to come up with some examples of products that have truly been upended by AI. Like one that came to mind is like Grammarly. I don't know how they're doing these days. I know they just bought Superhuman, the email editor. I think they're trying to pivot their company basically. Because like Grammarly, like you either type in or you paste in an email or a paper or something you're trying to write, and then it gives you a bunch of suggestions on stuff. And obviously LLMs are extremely good at that. So like a product like that, probably sees a lot of threat from LLMs. And then there's like, I don't know, the bigger question of like, is a whole category going to shift? Like, this was a question for me as a scheduling link provider. Like, are scheduling links just going to be dead? Are we just going to be using AI chat to negotiate times to meet? I tend to think like stuff is not going to shift as much as people often jump to initially. Like, I still think there's a place for the user interface that has well-crafted inputs for you to get something done. Like, I still think that beats chat interfaces in many cases. Now, like whether you'll need to incorporate AI into the functionality in order to stay competitive is a different question, I think. But like completely being replaced by AI, I don't know. I think there's still so many things out there because ultimately customers, they still have jobs to be done that they're hiring software companies to help them do. And I kind of reject the notion that like someone said this, or this is a kind of something that's just out there in the ether. Like, yeah, everyone's just going to be building their own bespoke software to do things. They're not going to pay for SaaS anymore. And I'm like, that's complete BS.
Yeah, like, that's not going to happen.
Like, no, like I still need team communication software. I need a calendar. I need project management tools. I need an email client. I need a CRM. I need error monitoring. I'm not going to build any of this stuff myself just because I may have some specific requirements or like I'm not so happy that Honeybadger doesn't do this thing. So I'm going to ask AI to build an entire error monitoring system for me. And then I'm going to maintain that infrastructure and host it myself. And like, no, that's not going to happen. So I think, yeah, SaaS is not anywhere close to dead because of AI. I don't think that's what Pablo is saying, but I'm just, making the point that like, I think there's still a ton of opportunity to automate things with software and sell it on a subscription basis. But I think, yeah, the question of like, how much is an industry going to move because of the way that people are now relying on AI? Like I brought up the calendar link example. Like, I don't know. A lot of this stuff is like to be determined. Like we'll see how the lines are drawn around like how much does, Chat GPT itself become like the level of influence that Google is in people's lives, like where some businesses that maybe were standalone before would have to become like a Chat GPT plugin because that's where everybody's like, going to do a certain job or something. So I think it's hard to know kind of where to draw the boundaries around products, but I don't think opportunities to build new software is vanishing.
Yeah, I would agree. The way I think about it, and I admittedly, I haven't given this particular question a ton of thought, but seeing Pablo's question made me think about it. And the examples that I could think of, because I went down the same exercise of like, how many apps, like Salesforce is not going away. It's going to change. And we could build a different Salesforce from scratch right now, or, a different CRM with AI first, blah, blah, blah. We could build a different one and maybe in the long term that subsumes it. But it's not like Claude or ChatGPT or any of these other models are just going to do everything that it can. But the place where I think the apps that I think have been or can be pretty easily replaced by AI are these apps that are more like utilities where it's almost a single feature. All right. So let's talk about if you had an app, and there are some out there where you'd go in, you'd type in your URL, and this is pre-AI, and it would help you generate a bunch of images and ad copy for Facebook ads. And it would do it and had a big library and it would pull them together. It's like, it's kind of a single feature, right? But it doesn't mean it wasn't important. I think AI, just as we know, just can do that really well these days and probably at a higher level, right? So unless they really integrate AI into that app, and even if they do, if they used to charge $20, $30, $40 a month just for that, and I'm paying $20 a month for, ChatGPT, and it can just kind of do 80% of that, then that it'll kill it, right? I think back to HitTail, which was a single feature. All it was, for those who don't know, you installed a snippet of JavaScript on your website. It looked at your search engine traffic. Well, later on, after not provided, it actually had to hit the Google Search Console or something like that. But it then looked at the keywords people were already finding you for, but you didn't rank on the first page for. And it would like recommend these keywords that like you should probably target these a bit more. You have a high potential to rank for them. Well, couldn't you just download a CSV now, put it into ChatGPT, do the exact same thing? Because it's a single feature. There was nothing beyond that. And that, I think, is a big differentiator, at least in my simplistic view of it right now, is if your app is a single feature. The beauty of app being a single feature is development can be done. It can be done. These are great, like indie hacker, lifestyle, step 1, step 2 businesses. You don't have to constantly build an ad and compete. But the danger there is that I think those are the big ones that like, boom, AI can swipe. I mean, I met people at MicroConf who had a guy built a $500,000 a year business. It was at MicroConf Europe several years ago. And it was like, it was converters. It was like a PDF to JPEG online converter or like an MP3 to some, that's all it was a utility to do that. And of course the world needs that. And he ranked number 1 in Google for a bunch of these terms. Do you need that now? Like it's that type of thing. And if you have simple ideas like that are all these like, hey, I'm just going to do this one thing and I'm going to create headshots for you and charge for it. It's like, well, AI can do that.
Yeah, I think those are cases where you could still potentially make something work by getting the distribution and being really good at marketing. It's like the companies that like are going to start like a new canned water or something. It's like, okay, bottled water has been done over and over again. So it's just purely a marketing play. It's purely a like, let's get this in front of people in the right spot. And there's something else there that's just unrelated to the level of commoditization that the product has that gets them to buy. And like, I think pre-AI I guess you could try to make technology more defensible. You could say like, well, there's some special sauce here and we do some good marketing. And now it's like a certain class of software. It's like so easy to replicate with AI, or just like ChatGPT can just do it. So then that makes you have to have a high degree of skill on marketing and messaging and getting stuff in the right place in front of your potential buyers. And it skews the strategy there for sure.
Yeah, and the other thing to think about is, I like what you said, it's basically like distribution, because there will always be consumers. There are a lot of consumers these days. Like if my mom wanted to add captions to a video, she would just go to Google and type in how to do that. She doesn't use ChatGPT, and so she's going to go to the top result, which is probably V.io if I know them. They're like really good at this type of SEO. And if she wanted to get headshots, she would use headshots.ai. Instead of using, you and I would just use an AI tool, right? A Dolly or whatever to do it. So there will always be some of that, but it really also depends on, look, are you trying to build a $10,000, $20,000 a month lifestyle business that's kind of on autopilot? Or are you trying to build a multi-million-dollar SaaS? It does depend on your goals. So thanks for that question, Pablo. Appreciate you sending it in. Our last question for the day comes from Daniel Human. He has sent in many questions to the show over the years, and he had a question about security. He said, Stelly mentioned security in episode 766, and I'm curious how much of an existential risk security is in a business that's doing, let's say, 7 or 8 figures, and what's the appropriate amount to be concerned about as the business grows. If founders are only thinking about things after they happen, I'm curious how much time, effort, and energy folks should be putting into this thought process. And look, Daniel brings up some other points. It's not just penetration testing or cross-site scripting. What if you have 10 employees and there's phishing attacks? I get phished with like Tiny Seed specific things, like where they will send it to an email address and say, and make it look like it's from me, and say, pay this invoice, and attach a PDF to a fake thing. And it's really obvious that it's fake, but I always have to chime in and be like, this is fake, don't believe this. So there's phishing, there's all kinds of stuff like this. And you can there's software and there's training, to help your employees not get phished. But really the question I think is around, and maybe it's 2 questions, right? Is it maybe it's application and tech security, and then it's the social engineering type. How do you educate your employees, and how much time should we spend thinking about this as founders at what stage? So with that very broad question, I'm going to pass it to you.
I mean, I haven't thought a ton about the social engineering side, just because I'm generally in a really small context where like, it's not that it's impossible for someone to try to do it, but the likelihood of it succeeding is low. I think if you're a 10, 50, 100 person company, like, yeah, the risk starts to go up as you have just more people, more chances for people to get scammed and stuff. So I think, like you said, there's training software and software that will like phish people to try to like, use it as an education tool, intentionally. So I think there's services out there that will help with that. Like, when's the right time to adopt those things? I don't think I have a well-calibrated like judgment barometer on that. It is probably earlier than a lot of people think that it is, because I think we just tend to be idealistic and think like, well, that's a big company problem. And it's like, it can probably kick in at a smaller stage than you'd be comfortable with. So I don't know if you have a sense. Before I go any further, like, do you have a sense on that? Like, what's the right size when you'd start thinking about like actually paying for something to help your team not be exposed to phishing attacks?
I have an it depends because I think it does depend on the industry that your app is in. So if you are a fintech, I think you need it probably from day one, and maybe from like a SOC 2 or an ISO 27001, like those compliance frameworks. I might implement something at that point if I was going to get those. If you're fintech, if you're in crypto, if you're in any type of finance, if you're handling people's money, payment processing, if you're, like where there's a real vector for someone to do harm and to transfer money, like big sums of money, of client money out, I think you have to have crazy lockdown pretty early. If you're building a utility for SEO keywords or for AI headshots and your team is 10 people, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it would suck if someone got phished and they got your credentials and, they took your server down or something. But the risk there is a lot lower. So I do feel like it relates to, for me, it's headcount that it relates to, because that's the vector, right? It's like I could be doing $10 million, and if it's just you and I'm not paying for it, because I know that it's when we get to, what do you think, 15, 20 employees, 25, 30? There's some number in there. It's not 50. It's below that for me. And 10 feels safe. 10 feels fine. But I will say, Tiny Seed MicroConf, 11 people, and we get phishing stuff all the time. And so we've had to talk to our team about it and make sure they're savvy. I think it also depends on the savviness of your employees. If you have a call center, let's say you had 3 or 4 people who are making $12 an hour answering phones versus like everyone is like a developer or a product person or just a more, a tech savvy person who's on computers all day and is really aware of it. I think there's kind of a judgment call there. But I do echo your thought that it's probably way earlier than we think and way earlier than we want to. How about that?
Yeah, totally. And I think the same holds true for the kind of application side, like making sure your code base is not vulnerable to abuse. So the kind of the next point I was going to make is that, if you have any kind of service exposed to the public internet, bad actors will try to abuse that system in some fashion at some point. Like it's just inevitable. Like they can find your website by, scanning IP addresses and looking for servers. So like, even if you don't have much SEO going on, like they'll find your service, if it's exposed on a port publicly. And there's a bunch of different ways that, people try to abuse systems. They try to do card testing if you have some kind of checkout page, to see if stolen credit cards will go through. If that happens a lot on a page that is yours, it can get you in trouble with your payment processor and interfere with that. They can try to send spam of any kind through any place where your application kicks out email that takes user-supplied content. This is why, like, you've probably noticed those emails that you get that are like, confirm your email address after signing up for a service, usually has like almost no information in it, because that's a very common one. Like it's the first email that gets kicked out from a system. So if someone can sign up for your service with an email address that they want to send spam to, and then inject spammy content into the name, then when it says, hi, insert name, confirm your email address, it'll be like, hi, Viagra, Bitcoin, whatever, And so, any place where your app kicks out emails, confirmation emails, invites, invite a team member. Well, that sends an email, and that's an opportunity for spammers to abuse it. Anything that you have like public facing, like SavvyCal has profile pages, and we've had people try to use our profile pages to link out to pirated movies on some BitTorrent site, just as a way to like host a public website that links to this thing. So I think in general, it's important for developers to always be thinking, getting in the mind of a spammer, like how could this thing possibly be abused? And I have some general tips that I just sort of jotted down based off of what I've done with SavvyCal and just other apps over the years. First one is like put rate limits on everything. Like most things in your app don't need to be able to happen 100 times a minute from the same user or same IP address. So ideally, you have some kind of, whether you use like a third-party service that sort of sits as a firewall, or you do it at your application layer inside of your code base. There's a lot of like middleware libraries in most ecosystems that you can put into your request processing pipeline, and you can just like say, okay, this endpoint where someone can send an invitation, how many invitations should they be able to send per minute or per 10 minutes or per hour? And just set it somewhere that's like at a reasonable level so that that backstops you from someone like writing a little script and suddenly they've kicked out 10,000 invites, to spammy email addresses. I think limiting capabilities before someone pays for your product. So if you have like a trial experience or like you can sign up and you can look around before you upgrade to paid, like make sure that you limit things as much as possible. Like the less people can do, the better. That's one of the hidden costs of having a free plan is you have to deal with potential abuse because you're allowing full capabilities of your product without a credit card, which is just a nice deterrent layer. People can obviously steal credit cards, but you can't do it at the same scale. I like to, have an easy way to block or ban IP addresses. So if you see something bad happening from an IP address, being able to, within a minute, just like immediately block it to stop the bleeding is good. Being able to easily ban an account, like have a button in your admin interface that's like, okay, this person is a spammer, block them immediately to shut them down. And I just also have various channels that, like I have a feed that's like anyone who signs up for SavvyCal, their email address and name show up in this feed. And I can just sort of dip in there and keep an eye on stuff. If I see like a big batch of signups come through and they're all from Russian email addresses, like, okay, that's a little bit of a red flag. I might take a peek at what's going on there. You could start to spot some of these things, which ideally you would have automated systems to catch it, but sometimes just having a human eye is what's needed in order to figure out like what's the signal here. And then if something does start to become a recurring pattern, then you can implement automated things to monitor for that signal. But like it's kind of hard to know universally like what are the different vectors that you're going to experience. So just having some feeds where you can keep an eye on stuff, like keeping an eye on web analytics. If you have a huge spike in traffic, something to look into. If you have a huge spike in like if your spam rates spike in your transactional email sending, like you should be keeping an eye on that. So just like the core metrics of the leading indicators when something's going wrong and just, keeping an eye on those.
Yeah, all that sounds great. And that's a nice balance of not gold plating it or overdoing it. These are kind of sensible things to bake in from the start. It's not so much extra effort. Obviously, you could go 5 times as restrictive, right, or as secure. And if you were building military grade software for going to war or whatever, you'd have a lot more. But this is like a really nice baseline. I like the way to think about that. And it's a lot about outliers. Like you said, it's like, you monitor if this spikes, if that spikes, just have something, throw up an alert, and you can go in and you're either going to be pleasantly surprised, like, oh, hey, we just had a really big customer send a big thing and we're going to make more money this month because of it, or we are presently being hacked and we need to figure out what to do. So it's always a balance. These are the really, I think, challenging topics where it depends on the industry. It depends on exactly what kind of software you're building, like we're saying, but it also depends, I think, on how big of it's kind of like how big of a vector you have, meaning when you just start out and you have 10 people coming to the website a month, it's just nothing's going to happen. But there will hit a point where you have 10,000 uniques, 100,000 uniques, whatever it is, where you get noticed on the internet. And then once that happens, you usually wind up on some type of list somewhere on the dark web and people really start coming in. And so having the basics kind of tied down or dialed in, I think is good, because there's always going to be, no matter how much you do up front, they'll always find another vector. And that's when you just have to kind of start figuring out how to plug those other holes as well.
Yeah, that's where stuff like rate limiting, like, okay, it doesn't prevent people from doing any kind of spam, but it hopefully just mitigates the level of damage. So like when you're just like putting a hard cap on how much volume, because that's really the worst thing. It's like if someone does figure out some vector and then you wake up in the morning and they've sent 150,000 spam messages and now your transactional bill is $1,000 and you've been blocked because you've exceeded your spam rates, like that's when stuff really gets into a bad place. So if you're just like mitigating volume, that can go a long way in just like capping the bleeding.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. Derrick Reimer, thanks so much for joining me on the show again. You are at Derrick Reimer on Twitter, and of course SavvyCal, if folks want to check out the best scheduling link on the internet. But it's not just scheduling for meetings. It is also scheduling for appointments. And do you want to give folks an idea of what's going on with the appointment side?
Yeah, so I've teased about, or talked about this on the show before, but SavvyCal Appointments, new product line from the SavvyCal team. And with this product, we're really trying to be sort of an infrastructure layer for businesses that need to kind of build in the custom scheduling flow into their existing stack, whether it's like a medical clinic that needs, to take initial consultations through a custom form. And as part of that, they need to present time slots for the providers in the office who can be on rotation to take these appointments. That's just one example. We're looking at kind of platform level integrations where if you want to offer sort of appointment scheduling in a box for your CRM product, we could potentially be your partner for that. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here to take some of our best learnings from building SavvyCal, the meeting scheduling product, and apply it to sort of these more kind of custom setups where people need scheduling capability, but you don't want to build everything from scratch. So that's what we're playing in.
Yep. So if you're either an agency, freelancer, and you are building this for, as you said, medical clinics or other appointment scheduling type businesses, you should reach out to Derrick. Or if you have a product, like you said, a CRM or any other thing where you're thinking about this, you can hit him up at derrick@savvycal.com. Thanks again for joining me, man.
Thanks.
Thanks so much to Derrick for taking an hour out of his day and coming back on the show. It's been great having you here listening to this show, whether it's been 1 week, 1 year, or 10 years. Thanks for listening this week and every week. This is Rob Walling signing off from episode 810. If you're listening to this, you made it to the hidden track. This is where I ambushed Derrick without any prior notice. He thought that we were going to dive into listener questions. And in fact, we are diving into questions about one of his favorite streaming shows, Selling Sunset. So I have confidential informants around the world.
Oh my gosh.
And I ask them about my guests. And Derrick, somebody outed you.
My guilty pleasure has been exposed.
Selling Sunset, seasons 1 through 4 only.
Yeah.
I've been told. And if folks haven't ever heard of or seen the show, do you want to give them a 30-second overview of what it is?
Sure.
And I think it's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix. Yeah. Yeah. This, I've kind of gone up and down on different types of TV shows that I like to,
I hear you couching this. I hear you trying to justify it already.
Unwind with, okay? And I do like me some real estate. It's always fun to see, fancy houses and great views and all that kind of stuff. And I've also discovered that I find, a little bit of reality drama is sometimes just a fun way to disconnect from real reality. And so I would say Selling Sunset and the similar types of shows are about 80% reality drama, 20% real estate, I think. And it's just, you're just following along the lives of these people who are, have strong personalities and interesting interpersonal dynamics like any reality show, and with a little bit of luxury real estate sprinkled in.
Right. And you're like, ooh, nice house. Oh boy, here's the argument again.
Yep.
Why are they breaking up and or getting married again or whatever?
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
Yep.
So I have a few trivia questions for you. Seasons 1 through 4 only, I've been informed that you've seen. And tried to make them
still
not.
plowing my way through it,
I think there are 9 seasons. When I researched it, I'm like, I've never even heard of this show. What is this?
That's the other thing. Like, I like sometimes when you can just you get into a storyline and then there's just a lot of meat on the bone there. You can just, sit with it for a while. It's kind of a bummer when you start a show and it's like, 9 episodes and then it's done. And you're like, great.
Right. And it's a bummer to sit down every night and be like, well, what do you want to watch? I don't know. What do I want to watch? What do I want? And if you know you're into something, you just roll with it. So
you can just dip back into the stream, catch a little bit of entertainment, and dip back out.
All right. So these questions are going to be in increasing order of difficulty. I'm guessing of all the listeners, there's like 2 that have even heard of this show. So it's what is happening right now? All right. Starting with the easy question. What Los Angeles-based real estate brokerage is featured in Selling Sunset?
The Oppenheim Group.
All right. Very nice.
Okay.
Which cast member, sorry, 1 for 1, 100%. Which cast member was known early on for her bold fashion choices and frequent drama with coworkers?
It's got to be Christine.
It is. Christine Quinn.
Oh, yeah. She's the villain.
Oh,
She's the villain.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Jeez. Do they make her out to be the villain, or is she like kind of actually the villain?
You know, here's the thing. I don't really know what goes on behind the scenes of these reality shows and how much the producers are like stoking the drama or telling this person like, hey, you should come in really hot into this argument, you know? So I don't know how manipulated it is, but boy, she sure seems like a villain just in her natural personality. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. So far 2 for 2. Before joining real estate, which Selling Sunset agent was a soap opera actress on Days of Our Lives?
Was that Chriselle?
It is. Chriselle Staus?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. 3 for 3. Brett Oppenheim eventually left the Oppenheim Group to start his own firm. What was it called?
Oh my gosh, I don't think I'm there yet.
What? ChatGPT!
Spoiler alert!
Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh no,
This
is brutal.
That's all right.
Oh, a spoiler of a reality TV show?
Yeah. I do occasionally look up something. There's a lot of like tech gazillionaires that end up showing up on this show. You know, like someone's dating some guy who's shopping for a $60 million house. And of course, 9 times out of 10, it's like, I made a bunch of money in tech. So I'll go look him up. Like, who is this guy? Have I heard of his company? And then I often will just get numerous spoilers in the process of trying to figure out, you know, some detail like that. So
yeah. Oh boy, that's coming up. That's what you have to look forward to, dude.
Yes. Okay.
All right. So you got 3 for 3. Let's do one more. Hopefully this is, maybe any of these are spoilers at this point, because I said ChatGPT 1 through 4. Are you done with season 4, or are you just in the middle of it?
I guess I could be partway through season 4. I honestly don't remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's try this one. Which agent joins the cast in season 4 and becomes a central figure in the conflict involving Christine and the alleged bribe situation?
Bribe situation.
Uh-oh. I wonder if this is also a spoiler.
I'm trying to think.
All right.
What could be construed? Is it Vanessa? It's not Vanessa.
Okay. Someone named Emma.
Emma. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't know if I've heard about the bribe, but maybe
This is, all right. Well, let's try one more. We're going to throw that one out. Last one. This is season 3, according to ChatGPT. This is your last. So you're 3 for 3. In season 3, what major event in Chriselle's personal life becomes a major storyline and affects her relationship at the brokerage?
Okay. She got a divorce. And then she started. Okay, all right. And then she's dating the owner of the brokerage right now, which was very shocking to see. Yeah, Jason, the forever bachelor, Jason. So we'll see how that plays out.
Huh. All right. Well, yeah, you truly do know a shocking amount about this show.
An embarrassing amount.
This is a little creepy. Is there any way, you could dial down that brain section and maybe know a little more about, I don't know, espresso or
You're like,
sourdough
dude, I was hoping
something.
you would fail this just for your own integrity's sake.
I kind of was a little bit, yeah.